The Trump campaign was just dealt not one, but two devastating blows at the worst time possible heading toward November. The first, Joe Biden's campaign just raised a staggering $53 million this past month, bringing their total cash on hand to $155 million and far outpacing the Trump campaign's $40 million cash on hand. The leading cause, the Trump campaign's inability to draw small-dollar donors. And I'll tell you what, it sure is weird that after years of grifting his supporters in nonstop emails after every indictment and every charge, and hawking sneakers and hats and NFTs and gold coins and photos and anything else that they can slap Trump's name on, that his supporters would be tapped out. You know what they say, can't get blood from a stone. As for the second point, while Biden overperforms financially, Trump himself is contending with major financial issues. Just days ago, it was revealed that Trump quite literally can't afford to pay the $464 million judgment levied against him in the New York fraud trial. He claimed that he went to dozens of creditors and wasn't able to find one that would be willing to back him, which is likely owed to the fact that this billionaire, and I hope you're sitting down for this, may not actually be a billionaire. Which I must say is especially bizarre considering this is what we were told by Donald Trump's own attorney.
Judge Engoron says that he wants this $350 million within 30 days. Now, I know that you're planning on appealing this, but you've still got to put up the full amount pending that appeal. Does Donald Trump have that kind of money sitting around?
Yes. I mean, he does. Of course, he has money. You know, he's a billionaire. We know that.
In fact, even Trump himself claimed that he wasn't worried about money while discussing the issue on Fox.
You have to come up with something like $400 million. How close are you to securing the bond, or what you need for that?
I have a lot of money. I could do what I want to do, but this was a horrible, illegal decision. This was a decision made up by a crooked judge, 100% crooked clubhouse judge, a disgrace with a equally crooked attorney general who campaigned on "I will get Trump," and we're appealing that decision, and we'll see how we do. But I'll tell you what, people are leaving New York. Businesses are fleeing New York because of that decision. They used the statute to go after me that was never used before.
So you're not
never
worried?
Used before.
You're not worried about the money?
I don't worry about anything. No, I don't worry about the money. I don't worry about money.
So I gotta say, it sure is weird that Donald Trump can't put up the money for his New York verdict, considering he just told us all on air that of course he has it. Unless, of course, he's lying about his finances, but that couldn't possibly be the case. Of course, regardless of what Trump says, his financial issues are going to be put on full display in the event that his real estate assets get seized. Here's MSNBC legal analyst Glenn Kirshner discussing that exact possibility.
So it feels like this is perhaps the next to last step on the road to Donald Trump's financial demise, because as we've been discussing, New York Attorney General Tish James said she will absolutely begin seizing his properties to satisfy this money judgment that has been entered against him. And Donald Trump is making a last-ditch plea to the court to not have to put up a bond, to perfect his right to appeal, so to secure his ability to appeal without paying out this money judgment. But I think it's highly unlikely the court will grant him any relief. And then I would take Attorney General James at her word that she will begin using the mechanisms available in the New York state law to seize his properties.
And so, Glenn, what would seizing those properties look like?
It would, they're going to go through the courts. It would actually look like Tish James, figuratively speaking, putting a big New York State padlock on Trump Tower, for example. And then the question would become, how does she extract the value from it? Does she put it on the market? Does the state actually take possession of it and convert it to a state-owned property? I think the devil's in the details with respect to how she will actually go about extracting the value to satisfy the $500 million judgment.
And to make matters worse, it now seems he's taking the rest of his party down with him. Just last week, Trump gutted the RNC to install his loyalists and sycophants, meaning he'll have much more control of where the RNC's funds go. And considering the guy is embroiled in multiple lawsuits that he can't pay for, giving him carte blanche to pilfer the RNC's coffers doesn't exactly bode well for where that money is actually supposed to be spent to elect Republicans across the country. And yet, I guess we really shouldn't be surprised that the GOP would ultimately sacrifice its most effective tool to help other Republicans, all in blind, breathless, desperate fealty to Donald Trump. If the last few years have shown us anything, it's that there are no lengths Republicans won't go to prove their undying loyalty to their God King. And look, none of this is to signal a victory lap for Joe Biden or Democrats, because Republicans have proven that they are less interested in small-dollar donors or appealing to as many voters as possible, and much more interested in waging war on democracy itself. Remember, an added benefit of Trump taking control of the RNC was to be able to deploy more lawyers to fight his absurd election denial claims. His beef with the RNC under an already fawning Ronna McDaniel was that she didn't do more to help his doomed legal efforts. And that's an issue I spoke about with the nation's premier voting rights attorney, Mark Elias. To that point, while the Trump campaign and its allies filed more than 60 cases in courts in their failed attempt to, overturn the 2020 election, the RNC itself only attached itself to about 4 of those cases. So what will this new makeup of the RNC mean for litigation moving forward in 2024?
Yeah, this is a really important point that you make, is that, in 2020, the RNC was still a separate organization from Donald Trump. Sure, it would mouth all of his talking points. Yeah, it absolutely was in the bag for him in terms of doing his political bidding and the like. But when it came to the election denying stuff, other than hosting, the press conference where, Rudy Giuliani's hair dye was dripping down his face and, Jenna Ellis was there and Sidney Powell was there. Other than that, they basically did not join in the worst of the worst. They were, as you say, only in 4 cases. I think that Donald Trump has had enough of that. He wants the RNC front and center in the election denier movement. I think he looks back and thinks that the RNC did not do enough in the election denial space in 2020. And Ronna McDaniel was the head of the RNC at that time. And he wants an RNC that is going to be all in election denialism and voter suppression this go around. And look, we've talked about this before. The RNC has been much more active in the last year in court than ever before. And that's because Ronna McDaniel has been trying to catch up to this train, has been trying to sort of catch up to but Trump keeps moving the goalposts, right? He keeps getting worse and worse and worse. And so I think for him, it was time for new leadership.
In other words, Trump isn't interested in reaching voters where they are. He isn't interested in expanding his base. He isn't interested in making a positive case for his presidency. He isn't interested in offering any semblance of a promising vision for the future. He is interested in using money and resources to further attack our democracy through the courts and through voter suppression efforts and through disinformation campaigns. This is an entire campaign predicated on undermining the very democracy that he's seeking to lead. This is no different than someone applying to be a firefighter by showing how many buildings he can burn down. So while it's heartening for democracy to see that Joe Biden and the Democrats are pulling in donations while Trump can't even manage to do that, just know that Trump is less interested in appealing to Americans and more interested in testing the fence to find the weak spots in an effort to pull the whole thing down. The left and right are playing 2 fundamentally different games, which should only serve to underscore the importance of this upcoming election. This isn't about taxes. It's not about states' rights or fiscal responsibility. It is about democracy itself, something that should unite Americans across the political spectrum. Because not for nothing, but there is nothing more conservative than conserving our democracy. That's what's on the ballot this November. Before you go, to see more content from MSNBC, make sure to subscribe to this channel by clicking the link right here on this screen. And you can also follow the link to see some exclusive content only on TikTok.